Hey, Derek, look. I'm rebuilding an engine with masking tape.
Well, I'll be there.
Hi YouTube, welcome back to my garage and to my even more dismantled engine. This video is a bit random. There's a bit of engine stuff, taking the pistons out, playing with rings, and a bit of engine part painting. I've started doing that. So, starting with the engine, originally I was going to leave the pistons in. I wasn't going to touch them. I didn't particularly need to take them out, but because I've been quite heavy-handed chucking brake cleaner and stuff, cleaning all the engine off, I was concerned that I might have washed a load of carbon and sand and grit down into the piston rings, which turns out I had. So they needed to come out anyway. I'm not an engine builder, all right? I'm not a mechanic. I do repeatedly say that in these videos. I am just a guy who's messing about in his garage, learning along the way. It literally is 5 steps forward, 4.9 steps back. I make a lot of mistakes, and for all I know, I'm going to destroy the engine, okay? So don't copy what I do. This is purely for your entertainment, watching me flounder about, learning as I go, and I'm massively out of my depth at the moment, but I'll get there. I've got people to help me and advise me. They've basically said, unfortunately, if you take the pistons out, the pistons and the rings, I'm not going to pretend to know what I'm talking about here, by the way, but the short story is the pistons and rings seat themselves to the cylinder bores in the run-in process and the driving of the car. If you pop the pistons out, you can't just pop them back in. There's science and shapes and erosion things going on that I'm not going to try and explain. If you want to learn about that, there'll be plenty of actual professional videos that will explain that. Short story is, you take the pistons out, you need to re-ring them. Had I known that, I probably would have approached this whole project differently, because anyone who's got a 6-litre V12 Jag knows that getting hold of 6-litre V12 rings is nigh on impossible. At first I was genuinely panicking because they're just not available. I was told that you can put the 5.3 rings on the 6-litre pistons, but the ring grooves are too narrow or thin on the 6-litre pistons, so you'd have to have them machined out. Obviously that's fantastically expensive, and you can't get 6-litre pistons very easily anymore. So if you knacker your 6-litre pistons, you're into a whole world of pain. The other option is some custom pistons that will obviously come with their own rings and sit in there. You're talking major engine rebuilding nonsense, okay? So if you're thinking of doing this, all I'm saying is a word of caution. If you take your pistons out, or you have to take the pistons out because, like me, you wash a load of sand down or mess something up, just check that you can get rings first and be aware that you're going to have to go down this route. Right, talking of rings. So you can't get rings anymore. The original ones just don't exist as far as I'm aware. Might be wrong there, but I couldn't find any. After a lot of searching, I found out that apparently these rings that are made by Ford, because obviously this engine is partly Ford. Ford have messed about, stuck their fingers in things. So apparently these rings, 2M5107, and it's 0.40 undersize or something. Again, don't quote me on those details, but these rings fit. They're for a 6-cylinder Ford truck, and obviously that's only got 6 cylinders, so you need 2 boxes, and then they fit. There are some differences. They're a little bit thinner. So if you've got your ring this way, the actual thickness of the ring that way is slightly thinner. They're a little bit more pliable, but I've been told by a couple of very reliable sources that these will work. We'll see, won't we? Okay, this is, yet another experiment of mine. I might rebuild all this, put it back together, and it turns out those pistons, piston rings. I keep saying pistons, by the way, in this video, and having to put rings with a star in front of it because for some reason my brain likes just saying pistons and forgets to say rings. Okay, that happens quite a lot. Yeah, I might find out that these piston rings are a disaster, but then, you know, that'll be entertaining for YouTube, won't it? Let's start with, well, start at the start, shall we? Start with A1. So I'm going to flip the engine upside down, undo the piston and pop it out. You just sit there. Oh, forgot. Got it propped up on some wood. While it's just resting, I like to just put a jack underneath to hold the front end. I don't think it'll be an issue, the weight of the engine, especially as it's not built up at the minute. That plate at the back must be designed to take quite a lot of stress as the car's moving along and the gearbox is bouncing up and down. So I'm not overly concerned, but it just makes me feel a bit better. But I do need to just pop that out before I rotate the engine over. There, you just go in there. Actually, I'll start with B1. I'm going to start at the front upside down. So this one here is B1. So we'll do that first. What do I need? I need some tools, that's what I need. But I'm assuming I'll be able to undo this one again with just my short extension, 3/8 ratchet. But the other ones I may need a little bit more leverage just to crack them off because they've not been off before. The reason this one's been off is I always kind of do a practice before filming. I don't know what I'm doing, as I repeatedly mention. Let's just put a bag out, ready. Where's my pen? Oh yeah. It's in my new box of bits. Right, so this is B1. That's a terrible B. I can read that, that's fine. Right, so I'm just going to lift off the bottom bearing type thing. There's its bearing shell or whatever it's called. You can't put these in, as long as you don't mix up top and bottom, you can't put that back in that way round because there's a little notch here. So as long as I keep those two bits together, I can't mess that up. And also, when it's back together, you also can only put that on one way. You can't put it that way. It just won't fit because it fouls on the next one along. I assume that's the case throughout the process, but we'll find out, won't we? So I'm going to keep that together. So I'm just checking these. It looks all lovely. There's a little bit of staining there, but it's not been spinning. You can actually match up the witness of the staining onto the bearing cap as well, it seems. So maybe if I did drop that and mix it up with the other one, I'd be able to re-identify it. So now I need, where's me hammer? I'm just going to use the soft end of it. Tap on these ends. You can just see the top of the piston there. So I'm just going to knock it down gently. Should be able to start. Yeah, piston's just starting to come out. Oh, what I should have said before is I've already done this one, so I wasn't bothered, but I need to on the other ones. Is before I push it out, I just need to clean any carbon rim away. I'll talk about that in a minute. That's a thing that you're supposed to do that I didn't show there. Whoops. Right, there's one piston, and there's its corresponding bearing. I'll just pop that there. So again, this, even though it's fallen out, I can't put it in the wrong way. What I could do is put it in that one by accident, but we're not going to do that. But it's got its notch, so that just goes back in like so. He says, maybe you need to put the notch in first. There's probably some specific method to this. Yeah, something like that. So I'm going to put them together so that things can't run off. Just nip this back up. Stick that over there. Right, there's B1 done. Man, I'm massively out of my comfort zone here. Anyone sees me doing anything wrong here, by the way, feel free to comment. I do not know what I'm doing particularly. This is not an instructional video, as I always say. Right, let's see how tight this one's going to be, because this one's, I've not done this one before. Oh, it's not too bad. I can still do it with my 3/8 ratchet. No, I think I would like a bit more leverage, just for a bit more control. Let's just see if that gives me a little bit more. Yeah, that's a bit better. Ah, actually, before we loosen that one off, as I just previously said, I need to just check there's no carbon lip on the top of the bore. So we're looking at A1. No, there's nothing there. I guess if this engine was, I mean, this engine's in really good condition. If it was, there might be a real lip there. I'll just give it a quick wipe. That's all it needs. So I haven't done this one before, so this is the first time I'm seeing this. All looks lovely. And again, looks lovely. And again, we've got some witness marks of staining, so heaven forbid they all got messed up. I'll be able to re-identify. Just pop that back in there for now, though. You can just sit there. So again, I just need to tap this down now. We've got this one stuck. No, there we go. Right. Okay. Another piston. Oh, you see, I put that one the wrong way around there. See how it doesn't match up? That's better. Where's my nuts? There's my nuts. Right, I'm going to pop this one in its bag, and then I'm going to work through the rest of the others. If I find anything harrowing, I'll film it. Otherwise, it should be a simple case now of just taking them all out. And there we have it, 12 cylinders, B1 up to 6 and A to 6. One thing I'm going to do though is remove the auxiliary shaft or jack shaft. It feels just slightly, it's weird, it just seems to catch very slightly at points like there. It just feels a bit stiff. So I want to check this this bearing shell inside here. There's one there and one there and one there. I hope they're all right, because to be honest, they're fantastically expensive. I mean, there is a second-hand, well, new old stock one of these on eBay at the minute. It's £150. That's in the US as well. That's if they'll ship over here. And there are companies in the UK here that make a set. They're about 500 quid. So I really don't want to have to replace it. But let's pop it out and just see what we're dealing with. So I've been looking into this. I don't think I need to take the sprocket off. Guess you can replace the sprocket if you need. I think I can just get in behind here with a, whoops, 1/2-inch spanner, nip these off. Obviously they're not going to have enough room to undo, but I'm thinking the whole mechanism will move forward as I do it. That's what I've sort of figured out in my head. Am I going to need a bit more leverage? No? Okay. There you go. That's what I was hoping would happen, is the whole mechanism can just move forward, so that will give me the clearance to carry on undoing these bolts. Might be a bit of a faff getting it back together, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Oh, that's all loose now. I just draw it forward, take this bit out. It's not quite evenly shaped. This is a very specific, what's it called, a thrust plate or something. So just make a note of which way it goes. It goes that way. I've noticed it's got a score mark on the front of mine, so it just goes back in that way, like so. And we should be able to just carefully draw this out. Right. Well, that all looks lovely. But that's probably a bit like the crankshaft. That's probably really hard, and it's probably got quite a soft bearing shell. So let's see what the... That doesn't look great, does it? There's definitely been some wear in there. It's not as bad as... It doesn't feel as bad as it looks. In fact, I'm just going to poke a little thing down these holes, and maybe they've got clogged up, and that's why it's been rubbing a little bit. I don't know. Could be talking absolute bollocks there. These two, a little bit of scoring on that one. Same on that one, but nothing to worry about. That's probably nothing to worry about, but that said, I will check. Just got a little bit of, it's actually caliper lock wire, whatever it's called. So just checking that oil feed hole isn't blocked, which it isn't. This one's actually not a hole. I guess they put two on, so it doesn't matter which way around you drift the bearing in. That's what I'm assuming. But yeah, it does seem to be free. So assuming it's not blocked down in this oil gallery, it should have been getting oil. Just gonna document this little procedure on video, and I've realised I'm missing a part. 2 secs, I'll just find the bit that's not on that. But I've put everything back where it was, apart from the timing chain, which I have decided to remove. I'm going to replace it. It's not expensive. Seems daft not to put a new one on while I'm doing all of this malarkey. To do that, you need to get this sprocket off, because the chain is trapped under there. So you need to work this sprocket off. I had a little bit of a look on Google. It's not fixed in place or anything. It does just slide on. But to do that, you need to take the front bolt off, remove this woodruff key from here. I don't know if you can reuse these. I'll look into that. Probably just get a new one anyway. Then what do? Then you can slide off this spacer or whatever it is. And then the sprocket itself is sitting on a woodruff key for location purposes. I don't know now whether it'll just slide forwards again, because I've had it off now. So I'm probably going to have to do the same as I did before, which is just to get some sort of tool behind it. Just being careful not to put any scratches on the oil pump or anything like that. And just, I'm trying to show this without the cloth getting in the way. And just gently ease it forwards off its, well, over its woodruff key. Might need to go from the other side. Just do it evenly. There we go. That might just do it. Yeah. So there's it. Oops, not pointing the camera in the remotely the right place. There's its woodruff key for location when you put it back on. And there's the sprocket. I've put these marker dots on the front face. I don't know if it matters which way around it goes, but I thought it'd probably be a good idea if it went back on that way. I don't know as well whether it's like motorcycle sprockets where if you change the chain, you change the sprocket. I don't know. I'll look into that. So that now means I can remove this I say old chain, it's not particularly old. Well, it is in years, I guess. It's been on since 1994, and we'll replace that. While I'm faffing about on this Saturday morning, not doing anything particularly useful, I may as well show you the oil pump for anyone who's got to replace their oil pump. You need to get to, oops, there we go, it's already loose. Come on, stay there. Obviously, if you're not rebuilding an engine, don't put bolts there, because they fall down the top cover and disappear forever. But yeah, if you were replacing your oil pump, you'd do what I just did there with the sprocket, the woodruff key and all that bollocks, pull that forwards and off, and then undo 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts, and one oil pump is removed. It's got these flats that drive off the crankshaft. They locate onto those. I'm just thinking whether it matters which way round they are. I highly doubt it. So there's your oil pump. I guess that's just one unit. I'm not going to take that apart. Today's job is to swap over the piston rings, and in the process give these pistons a bit of a clean up, and then get them all bagged up, sealed against dust and dirt and crap, awaiting refitment to the engine. I've got a deglazing tool on its way, so once the cylinders have been deglazed, these can go, and everything's been cleaned up, these can go back in. They've already been cleaned up a little bit anyway. They were covered in carbon and crap on the top. I cleaned them out in the engine originally because I wasn't planning on taking them out. It was a stupid idea because all the grit and stuff ran down the side, so I wouldn't recommend doing that, but that's what I did. I'm learning as I go. So I'll take the top ring off first, get hold of it, and just walk it off, round, like so. I think it's called spiraling. I don't really care what it's called, it's just removed. These second ones on this seem to be incredibly brittle, so if you are wanting to keep them for any reason, you need to be very careful. It doesn't take much at all to snap those. The top ones seem to be a lot stronger. Then there's 1, 2 small rings here with, I think it's the oil control ring, I think it's called, in the middle. I found it's easiest just to spin it round until you can see the ends here, and just use a screwdriver just to get in there. Just saves a bit of time anyway. Because I'm not bothered about keeping them, I don't care if they get bent up or anything, so I can be a bit violent taking them off. So that's now de-ringed. I was just holding it in the vise as well. I wasn't gripping it or anything, but it just makes life a lot easier. I'm going to dunk that in its, that's just brake cleaner. Clean my hands up, stick some gloves on, give it all a good scrub, get it as clean as I possibly can, re-ring it, oil it, bag it up. There's its bag ready. We're doing A6. Where's my gloves? That's it. And then we've got our rings, starting with, whoops, what's that? That's the number 2 ring. Oh, actually, it's the last one in the pack anyway. So that's a number 2 ring. I know that because on these ones, they do have an orientation, focus, which is up on the second ring. So that's our number 2 ring. We should have one top ring left in here. They don't have an orientation on these ones. There's no pip and no thing saying up. There's the top ring. There's the flappy ring. Is it called an oil control ring? I think it might be. And there's the 2 rings to hold the... Is there 2 there? Hope there is. Yes. There's the 2 there to hold this in. I like to. This is what I figured out seems to work the best. Don't get caught on there and stretch yourself. Yeah, the best routine, is that the correct word for putting these in? Seems to be to put this in first, like so. I'm not going to worry about orientation and, what do they call it, clocking the rings for now. I don't care what orientation they're in right now. Will you separate? Then take one of your lower oil control rings, slot that in underneath, and just work it round all the way underneath without bending it. So that's in place. and then work one in on the top of that wavy ring, like so. I tried putting them all in together. I tried putting a thin one in, then the wavy ring, then another thin one, and it just didn't seem to work. Doing them in that order seems to work, so that's what I'm going to do from now on. We then want the ring that has the word up written on it, which is this one here. And that's the second ring. Oops. I'm going to pop that in with my thumb and then just gently get it stuck. Then I'm going to get the second ring, make sure the word up on these rings. I don't know which rings you'll have, so you just got to be careful and make sure whether they've got an orientation. I'm just going to pop that in, hold it in with my thumb, and then, whoops, drop it into the top ring by accident. Just going to hold that in with my thumb and then hopefully just walk it round into that middle ring. Like I said, I'm not bothered about orientation right now. And then hopefully do the same with the top ring. And there we go. And that concludes the engine dismantling part of this video. Hopefully concludes the engine dismantling part of this entire project. I've only got the crankshaft left in the block, frankly, and I don't really want to touch that. So fingers crossed, that is done. Next video, deglaze the cylinder bores, get the pistons back in, refit, oil, sump, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I can finally move on to rebuilding and refitting the heads, and then we're into timing and all that hilariously scary stuff. So moving on to the heads and all those engine components. I haven't filmed painting these parts. I have done a little section in this, well, not a little section, it's quite a long section because it's a massive faff on painting one of the heads. I've still got the other one to do, but if it comes out anything like this one, I'll be very happy. There was a lot of trial and error went into that, but I seem to have found a method of masking and painting that gives wonderful results. So hopefully going forward, things will be plain sailing, unless they just make a massive mess of painting, which does happen sometimes. I've got a load of old parts these days, which I found is a fantastic way of masking things up, because trying to do intricate shapes can be very difficult. So, like I said, I haven't filmed painting any of this crap, but let's move on to the next section where I am tackling one of the heads. There's a lot of parts on here that want painting, but there's about equal amounts of parts that don't want painting, and they're all hidden underneath and round bits that are fixed to the heads. There's a lot of stuff goes on these heads. So I'll talk through each part and how I'm going to mask it up, starting with the exhaust manifolds. I was actually going to put my manifolds on here and just spray around them, but they're quite chunky and there's a lot of metal head surface that I do want paint on, and that I just would have struggled to get the paint in. So these ones I did decide, I was going to put the gaskets over, maybe stick them on or something and then get replacement gaskets. But with this, I did figure out, and I've done a test, I can just mask these up with masking tape, run around them with the hammer tap, tap, tap method, or a scalpel, and that's doable. So moving on up to the water rails, things get a bit more complicated. I've actually got a whole set of old water rails. So my original idea was just to fit them to the heads and just spray. But again, a bit like the exhaust manifolds, they're quite big, chunky, big overhangs. It'd be quite difficult for me to get up underneath and make sure I was getting paint, especially on, say, this bit here, because I do want that all painted. I just don't want the actual gasket surface painted. So, because I've got a full spare set of them, fortunately I've also got a spare set of blanks. These are usually we've got one of these on each side. One of these connects onto the throttle return spring. So I'm going to pop a gasket on each one. Obviously, this is all going to be laboratory level clean before I spray. But a gasket on each one, put a blank on, and then they're just held on with a couple of sacrificial bolts. These will get covered in paint. Not bothered about that. So they just screw on like that. Again, these blanks, they fit perfectly, so that'll be like that. That just leaves me with 2 holes because I've only got 4 of these. So what I've done is I've decided to just pop the engine lift eyelets on because they're about the right shape. I've got a spare set of them as well, so I've got some nice shiny new ones to go on my engine, so these can be covered with paint. I'm not bothered. Again, I'll put a gasket on. The only issue is a little bit of paint might go up through here, so my plan for them is just to cap that hole with a little bit of masking tape. They need cleaning because they're all oily at the minute, so the masking tape won't stick. Pop that on there, and that should be sprayable. I'm going to pop this up on blocks high enough up as well that I can get underneath, make sure I get paint up all around here. Obviously the underside will be completely masked off. 2 secs, I'm getting a delivery. Never for me, is it? Right, delivery sorted. I've screwed these down just so you can see how they're going to be. Like I said, everything will be cleaned. These will be masked up. Moving on to where the cylinder head studs come out. Starting with these little ones on the outside. These don't go through to the water jacket. I ummed and ahed for ages about whether I could get away with painting these. These ones I certainly don't think I could because they do go through to the water jacket. And this washer here, obviously this is just a random bolt, ignore that. But this washer here is called, well, it's what Jaguar calls the special washer and charges the special price for. I have a whole new set of these and these ones. These are special washers as well. They're slightly smaller. These ones seal the water jacket in. So when that's pressing down on there, it's a metal on metal seal. I think as well, I'm probably going to look into sealing the threads to try and reduce any risk of any coolant coming up out of there. I think that's an issue. I haven't had that issue on this engine previously, but obviously I've dismantled it all and maybe I've unsettled things, so I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that's not a potential issue. And I think painting that surface there might cause issues with whatever seal I want pressing down on there, if that makes sense. Just popped over to the engine to further explain that part. These are the larger studs. As you can see, they go down into the water jacket, so when all the coolant's doing its coolant thing, it can come up these studs, and if these threads aren't properly sealed onto the heads, I believe, I've not had this problem, but I believe coolant can just work its way out of there. These are the smaller studs here and here, and as you can see, they're just going into the actual block. So what I've come up with is some, again, sacrificial bolts, just cheap bolts. That's the wrong way around, isn't it? That's why that won't go in there. That's that one. That's that one. There we go. So I've got new washers coming anyway. They should arrive today. I was kind of hoping that would be my delivery, but it wasn't. Well, actually, just before we go back to the head, I have just had a delivery from S&G Barrett. So there's the special washer large and special washer small. And I can then paint, basically just sit them in like that. They're all the way along here. There's 12 of these and 14 of these. It gets a bit more complicated on the other side. Let me just flip this head round. Right. It's not quite so easy to do. Well, it's just as simple to do the big ones on this side. So again, there's, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, so there's 14 in total. And these ones again, I'll just drop on the floor. Come here. Oops, just hit my camera off the bench, sorry about that. They will just sit like that. I'll make sure they're pretty much where I want them before I start spraying. They should be fine. These ones are a bit more of a faff because I can't put a bolt down in there for obvious reasons, just can't get in. So with these, it's just a case of popping the thread up, popping the old washer on, and screwing a nut on, something like that, and then that's now protected, but paint should still get in behind here, all around here. Oh, that's a point. I forgot I must get the old spark plugs out as well, and I'll stick the old spark plugs in so that I don't get paint in the spark plug threads, because that would be a pain in the ass. The next issue is the air inlet manifold seal. Again, I could probably get away with painting that. It's only an air inlet seal and it's got a big thick gasket on it, but it just doesn't feel right doing that. I feel I should try and keep the bits that are metal. I don't know if that's just a massive amount of extra work I'm making myself, but I was originally going to try and put the air inlet manifold on and spray around it, but it's a really big, fancy bit of pipe work. That wasn't going to work. Obviously, trying to mask the outline of where it sits would be pretty much impossible. So this is a rather expensive way of masking things up, but what I've done is just gone and bought 2 sets of new gaskets. I've obviously got a set then to put on the car when I rebuild, but I've got a sacrificial gasket. I then have a spare set of cam housings, so that's handy because, again, trying to mask up all where the cam housing sits would be a nightmare. So my plan is just to drop on my spare, why are you stuck? There we go. My spare cam housings. Obviously, I'll make sure that it's pressed down on the metal on metal seal. There's no gasket goes in between the cam housing and the head. When I come to put my cam housing on, I think I do need to seal that with some sealant. I'm going to look into that. Obviously, this needs cleaning up very much. It needs to be super clean before it goes on, and then that can just get covered in paint. I'm not bothered about that. And then I've got new ones of these as well. So these are my old ones. I've only masked it up, not because I give a toss about getting paint on the old ones, because they're pretty much scrap. I might restore them at some point, but the paint is so flaky when I'm blowing paint out of the air gun on this, flakes of old, you know what the paint goes like on these, it just dries up and just lifts off, and I don't want that falling off on my nicely painted head. I need to cover these threads anyway, so I'll stick some nuts on them, which are metric, by the way. That pissed me off today. I went and bought a load of 5/16 UNC nuts for doing these, and then realised they're just M8. There's a real mix of metric and imperial on this end of things after Ford took over. But I think that's all good. Protect all threads, make sure everything's masked up. So first job is to dismantle all this now and clean everything to within an inch of its life. Right, that's all about 50% done. The brake cleaner's done as much as it's going to do. It's now up to me. I'll start with this cam housing. I'll just go across this with a wire brush. Obviously, I don't care about painting this. This is just for masking at this stage anyway. Maybe I'll try and restore this cam housing at some point, but not now. But I will just get the wire brush in here and remove any of this loose muck and corrosion, because I don't want that flinging off onto my head while I'm painting. Again, I'll go over all these bits with a wire brush, see if I can get in all these bits. These bits I'll need to be a bit more careful, maybe use a nylon brush, I'm not sure. Clean up the gasket surfaces as best I can, ready for masking. These bits have all come up pretty good. I've got most of the gunk and grease off these old gaskets, so I can reuse them now. Hopefully stick a bit of tape over them for these bits. Now, the air intake manifold area turned out to be a bit of a faff. This, I knew this wasn't going to be enough just resting this on here and filling the holes, because it wants to lift up, and especially when I'm spraying with the gun, it'll just get under here and lift it up, and the paint will get all over the place. So what I'm trying anyway is some tape down the holes. That seems to be holding it pretty firmly down. I'm now just covering the holes with some gaffer tape. It's the next morning and this head is all ready for paint. I'm not going to lie, that took many hours of my Saturday night getting it to this stage. Not particularly looking forward to having to unmask this one and then do the process again on the other head, but that's what I've committed myself to. There was a time when I used to go out drinking and socialising on a weekend. How life changes as you reach middle age. Let's start round this side, because I think the last shot I did before this shot was me masking up the exhaust manifolds. Hopefully that'll be successful. It's going to be a pain in the ass getting all this masking tape off. And then these random bits that I put on the coolant pipe outlet type bits, I did stick some masking tape on these ones, so if paint goes up that little crack, it's not going to cause any issues. One thing I will do before I start spraying is I always get the airline and give it a good blast with air, to knock any loose dust off or anything, but also I get to see how it's going to act in wind, because there's a lot of wind comes out when you're spraying paint, and sometimes bits of masking tape that you didn't realise are going to flap and then stick to your paint. Like that looks a little bit suspicious, so I might need to just nip that up or trim it off or something. It's just a little thing I thought I'd mention. That's why this is stuck down, by the way, because I could see that this flap was probably going to get lifted by the wind. Obviously, it's all masked off underneath. Don't worry about those bolts sticking out. They're just my slight sort of bodgy idea of how to mask off where the special washers will seat. So hopefully that'll work. They're just held down by gravity. So let's get the gun out and get some primer on this. I'm not too bothered about, there's a little bit of dusty looking corrosion up there. I'm going to make sure that's not loose, but I'm not particularly bothered about it underneath the primer, because obviously this is just being used as a masking thing. So yeah, don't worry about that if you've noticed that on these shots. Oh, one additional investment in the garage. I bought myself a proper inline airline pressure regulator type thing, and it's got a water trap. It's actually one for air tools, so it's got an oiler next to it. Clearly I didn't put any oil in it because I don't want to oil my paint, but I just couldn't get just the water trap one on its own from the shop the other day, and I was in a bit of a rush to get one because the water trap, I was using water traps in line on the back of the gun, and they're just cheap and crap and a bit bulky. So that's much better. I can set that now to, there's no set rule on painting, and I certainly don't know what I'm doing, so don't take my advice, but I'm setting it to about 50, 45, 50, and then adjusting the flow actually on the gun. Let's just give it all a good blast off. Check for any loose masking that might cause issues. I'm just checking the little nooks and crannies, and to be honest, I'm very happy with that. I might have a tiny run over there. I'm not bothered about that. It's primer, so I'll be able to sand that back before painting if it is an issue. And frankly, if that's the only run I got painting all of this nonsense, then I'm laughing. So I'm going to leave that to bake for another 20 minutes or so. Then I'll turn the lights off, walk out the garage, and I'll leave that for at least 24 hours. So as you saw in those last shots, I have now demasked this head. It's all done. That was 99% a success. I did have the odd issue. A little bit of primer bled through under the cam carrier housing, which I kind of expected. That's fine, I can remove that. And obviously then we'll have our metal on metal seal again. Very impressed with how the air inlet manifold gasket came out. There's no way I would have been able to mask those intricate shapes. I did have to peel a little bit of primer and gasket off there, but no mither really. All looking good under there. Got paint and lacquer and everything all up in the nooks and crannies, so I'm happy about that. Same on the other side, using the water rail gaskets. There's a little bit of gasket there still to peel away, but very impressed with how that came out. And again, my metal on metal seals for the special washers. Hopefully that'll do the trick. Well, we'll see, won't we? We're all going to find out together. This is one big experiment. Now that will do for this video. I'm going to go away and paint up the other head, and I've got the bottom plate of the engine to paint as well. Basically anything apart from the engine block itself. And then next video, hopefully I'll get the cylinders deglazed, get the engine block rebuilt, and then I can paint the block ready for reinstallation of the heads at a later date. That's the plan anyway. See you then.